Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 44 of Two Nerds in a Pod for October 3rd, 2017. My name is Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I got my comrade in gaming commentary here with me, the Miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, how are you, my friend? How are things, dude?
Well, I'm doing well, but man, I am so tired today. I didn't, unlike you, Mr. Nice Guy, I didn't get the chance to take a nap, sadly.
Yeah, before the stream started, we were talking about, I pretty much came home and crashed on the couch. I was tired, and my kids don't like that. So it was like I took a nap, but it was a nap where I was dreaming that I was in the ring with Mike Tyson because I keep getting punched in the face in my dreams. Wake up, it's just my kids punching me for real. So that's what was happening there. But other than being tired, how was your week, Mac?
You know, it was all right. This weekend had some fun stuff. Had way too much crap to do, but in the end, I had myself a good time. Sunday played some video games just to kind of relax and unwind. So yeah, all in all, I'd say it was a pretty good weekend, but mostly uneventful, sadly.
Dude, that's good. We'll talk more about what games you played later on when we get to that section of the show. One of my kids had their birthday this weekend, my youngest son, and he turned 4 years old. So we had an awesome little, just kept it to family, party. And my wife made some awesome Ninja Turtle birthday cakes for him. I did some ribs and some shrimp on the grill. And it was a fantastic weekend. Nothing too spectacular, nothing too crazy, keeping it simple. I did have a show this week. I hosted a comedy show. As I do on the weekends, I host and feature. So that was solid, and not much else to say. No fights this week at the show. If you remember last week's episode, I talked about I did a show at an old folks home, retirement home, and two of the residents got in a fight. Very boring week for me. Mac, I say we hop right into the gaming news and do what we do best, my friend. What do you think?
I think we should. Let's do it.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, you guys. For those of you who are here live with us on twitch.tv/2nerdsinapod. For those of you who are listening after the fact, we appreciate you also. Well, let's jump right into the gaming news. Now, Mac, we have a big news story that's kind of not rocking the industry, but it's making waves in the industry. This first news story comes from our boys and girls over at Polygon. It deals with PlayStation. It says, PlayStation has a new worldwide boss effective immediately. Andrew House is out as president and chief executive of Sony Interactive Entertainment after 6 years. Sony Corporation announced today. Now, he's been with the company longer than that, just so people who are keeping track at home fact-checking us know. That's just how long he's been president, I believe, and CEO. A statement from Sony headquarters said House will be replaced by John Codera, presently Sony Interactive Entertainment's deputy president. House will remain on as a director and chairman of the SIE, quote, through the year to assure a smooth transition, the statement said. Mac, now as a side note, whenever someone quits at a company, they always stay on to ensure a smooth transition. If you're in this position, are you doing that? Because I don't know if I am. You know what I mean? I feel like, I'll give you a minute to think. He has the thinking look on his face. I feel like if I say, hey, I'm going to retire, and they're like, okay, but will you stay here and help make it smooth? Nah, I'm going to the Bahamas. I don't have the time or desire or energy after my whole career of doing this. I want to relax. That's how I would do it. But how would you handle that?
I probably would, honestly. I mean, it would depend greatly on how I felt about the company, but I mean, if we're talking about, retiring, then presumably everything's pretty amicable. So I would probably hang around and, try and help a smooth transition, stick around for some questions, tag team a couple of issues just for the first little bit. But yeah, I don't think that's too crazy. I would probably do it.
Yeah, it does depend on the circumstances. You're right. I was really mostly trying to be funny, but
I'm sorry, Mr. Nice Guy. Do you ever get tired that you're throwing out these jokes, this great material, and it just poof, lands
flat?
I feel like one of those. I feel like that kid in the Sandlot who can't play baseball.
You're killing me. You're killing me, Smalls.
That's it. I feel like Smalls sometimes, or I'm just like, do I put my glove here?
Was I supposed to catch that softball?
Was I supposed to? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's all good.
So you never get tired of it, though.
I never get tired of it, dude. I'm used to it. It's
Good.
Comedy's
All
trial and
stay.
error. It's trial and error. Anyway, guys, the CEO is out now. Mac, here's my other question, because we've talked about this type of thing happening at other places in the industry. Naughty Dog lost some people. Even during the production of Uncharted 4, they lost one of their main writers. I forget her name. Do you think that this affects the way things are done? Like, as far as, is PlayStation going to go down the hole? I'll give you my opinion. I feel like these transitions happen smoothly because even the second, third, fourth, and fifth in command have a really good understanding of the business, of what gamers want. And so I don't think that we're really even going to notice a difference now that this gentleman has retired. Would you agree with that, or do you think anything different?
I don't know as I'd go so far as to say that they'll keep the ship sailing because they know what's going on or they know what gamers want, but I'll definitely agree with you that for the most part there are enough people working in the kitchen together, as it were, that one person changing out doesn't, I don't think is probably going to change the direction of Sony too much. But who knows? Maybe it will.
Yeah, we will find out very soon. Here's another news story that's kind of, I found it interesting. This is on Game Rant. It says, as far as the rest... Oh, let me make sure I start from the beginning of the story, Mac. I almost started reading in the middle. It says, without a doubt, Sonic the Hedgehog is one of the most iconic and enduring properties to ever exist within the history of the video game industry, as the blue blur is typically the first thing fans think of when they realize that they gotta go fast. So considering Sonic the Hedgehog's popularity, it makes sense that a feature-length film for the spunky protagonist is in the works. But Sony Pictures is no longer attached to the project, as the American studio Paramount Pictures has officially received the movie rights to the franchise. As it so happens, Paramount was able to acquire the film rights for Sonic the Hedgehog after Sony Pictures let theirs lapse after the project's initial announcement way back in the year 2014. Despite this, however, much of the team that was developing it at Sony remains, with Deadpool director Tim Miller executive producing, while his longtime Blur Studio collaborator Jeff Fowler is to make his feature directorial debut on the film. I'm not going to read too much more about this. Do we need a Sonic the Hedgehog movie? Do we want a Sonic the Hedgehog movie?
No, and unequivocally, no. We do not need it. We do not want it. I mean, animated, sure. 3D, 3D rendered, sure, whatever. But live action, no. Burn it with fire.
Yeah, and I don't know. I was breezing through this. Did it say it was live action? Because I was actually going to joke and say, is someone going to put on a blue suit and run really fast? Like, I just don't see this being a good movie. I think it's kind of implied that it will be...
Yeah, the live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movie is speeding up once again. As yesterday. So, yeah, this is supposed to be a live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
I don't see how this is a good idea in any universe. I don't. And I don't care if there's some real people and then Sonic is CGI. I just don't see how this is a good idea. It's not Ninja Turtles, you know what I mean? Like some movies that are, and actually that's not a video game movie, that's more of like a comic book movie. But,
and I will contend that the superior Ninja Turtles movie is definitely the first one. The one in what, 1991?
Yeah,
92?
1990 something, early 90s, yeah, late 80s. In those, you know, you have the premise of turtles interacting with real people. In Sonic the Hedgehog, it's just a bunch of furry animals interacting with each other. So I don't know how they're turning this into a live-action film, and I won't find out until it hits the bargain bin, because I'm not taking my kids to see this. That's where I stand on it. Moving on, Mac, unless you have other comments on that story.
Nope, I think you summed it up.
Okay, sounds good. Let's talk about Destiny 2, which is my favorite game right now, man. Destiny 2 is so good, Mac. It's everything Destiny 1 should have been. It's everything that an MMO on this console should be, as close as an MMO can exist on consoles. This story is from IGN. It says, as detailed by Bungie on Twitter, Dead Orbit has beaten both the Future War Cult and New Monarchy factions. As a result, its members have unlocked a special powerful weapon, the Dead Orbit Scout Rifle, at a discount price of 1,000 Glimmer. That's the currency used in Destiny, one of the currencies used. However, players in the losing Future War Cult and New Monarchy, that's me, can still purchase their powerful weapons, the Future War Cult Pulse Rifle and the New Monarchy Sidearm, but only for the higher cost of 50,000 Glimmer. To put things in perspective, you can only hold up to 100,000 Glimmer. So you have to use half of your Glimmer to purchase it. I just saw someone in the chat say Future War Cult for life. That's what I'm talking about, man. That's the clan that I was in. That's the faction that I chose, even though we lost. So bottom line, I'm not going to ask any questions about this, Mac. I know you don't play Destiny. But for those of you who are wondering who won that faction war that Destiny 2 had, Dead Orbit won. They get a discounted gun. The rest of us got to pay full price. I think this is a great idea going forward. Adds more to the game, more to do. Let's talk about Game of the Year editions. And Mac, this is something that you may have an opinion on. In fact, I know you will, because it's something that is. Oh, my phone. Had to stop that ring. Mac
had to do a little dance to the jingle.
And, let me take a minute to say, everyone who's here live with us, we appreciate you guys. The regulars are all here. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hit us up with questions in the chat. We've kind of altered the way we do viewer question of the week, but we will answer questions throughout. This next news story is on Game Rant as well. It says, without a doubt, Horizon Zero Dawn is easily one of the best PS4 exclusives to be released in quite some time, and many would even go so far as to say it can be considered as a contender for one of the year's best releases, no matter what the platform. With that being the case, it makes sense that a Game of the Year edition has now surfaced online ahead of an official announcement from Guerrilla Games. As seen in the image below, it appears as if eagle-eyed gaming fans were able to quickly pick up on a listing for Horizon Zero Dawn that appeared on PlayAsia's website. It seems as if the reveal of the special version of the open-world action-adventure title was unintentionally on PlayAsia's end. For when one tries to navigate to the retailer's listing, it sends folks to a 404 page instead. So here's my question about this, Mac. Horizon Zero Dawn, critically acclaimed. I believe it sold between 3 and 4 million copies from my research earlier today, but it just came out earlier this year. No one has voted on what the Game of the Year will be, but yet a Game of the Year edition is being released. Here's my thing. Here's my two questions. First question for you is, should a Game of the Year edition be released preemptively like this? And second question is, should it be released so soon after the game was released? Because this just came out in March, I believe. So that's my questions for you.
Okay, I'll take the second question first and say that I don't know how much has changed in this game since its initial release, but I have difficulty believing that it needed that much of an overhaul in order to be released. Now, for example, 2 months after it was released, if we had a Game of the Year edition complete with bug fixes and everything for, say, Batman Arkham Knight, sure, because they had to do enough work on that game just to get it running, that 2 months later, a full new packaged version sure might make sense. But for the most part, I see Game of the Year editions released the year after there's actually a Game of the Year vote held. But, I mean, hey, if they want to just call themselves Game of the Year, more power to them, I guess.
There have been a lot of games that have done this, and some of them weren't even contenders, like Dead Island did this a few years ago. Now, here's where this gets really, really interesting to me, and I should have mentioned this earlier. The DLC for this game, the first piece of DLC, comes out in November.
So it doesn't even have DLC.
No, and the Game of the Year, according to this listing, which may or may not be real, is set to release December 5th. So we're getting the first piece of DLC November 7th, supposedly the Game of the Year edition December 5th. I'll give you my opinion. That's way too soon, especially if they are going to potentially release another piece of DLC. You can't release the Game of the Year edition 1 month after the DLC comes out. That's absolutely ridiculous. If that's the case, just give the people who bought the game at launch the DLC for free, and then sell the Game of the Year edition for people who didn't pick it up. $49.99 is the going rate for the Game of the Year edition. Anyone who bought the original at launch and is now buying the DLC is going to feel ripped off. And I don't think that's right on many levels. That's my opinion. Let us know what you think in the chat. Okay, let's do, how far in are we? We are 15 minutes in. We have time for a couple more news stories. Let's see. We got Blizzard. Let's talk about Blizzard and... Yeah, let's talk about Blizzard. So one of my favorite games, you guys, probably my second favorite game right now is Overwatch. And this article comes from Game Informer. It says, it's October, which means the spookiness is back in full force, including in Overwatch's seasonal events. That's a weird sentence. That means that last year's Halloween Terror is coming back for 2017. Posted on Twitter today, Blizzard released a video showing new costumes for McCree and Reaper, along with a cryptic poem. The nights grow cold and monsters appear, a great evil gathers, and Halloween draws near. That's brilliant, brilliant poetry. You could check out the tweet and the accompanying video on this website. Last year's event included a horde mode for a few heroes. Considering other events, I can't read because my phone's too dark. Let me turn up the brightness real quick. Last year's event, the returning summer event also let players buy last year's costumes, so if you missed out on any last year, now is probably the chance to get them cheaper. So, guys, if you missed on any of the costumes, what's up, Mega Gamer? I see you in the chat. How you doing? If you missed out on any costumes last year, you can now purchase them. Overwatch is keeping things going with the free content, killing it as Blizzard always does, and I think it's fantastic. Mac, let's end there with news stories. I have a couple more, but I kind of want to keep them for topic of the show, which we will do later. I'll turn it over to you, man.
Okay. Well, so welcome back, everybody, once again to Nerds in a Pod, episode 44. Today we're going to talk, or I should say now we're going to switch gears over to gaming history. We've looked at some current events in gaming, but let's... You know, there is one thing, Mr. Nice Guy, that I wanted to discuss, but I know you well enough that I'm almost certain that it's going to be the topic of the show.
Are you sure?
I am pretty darn sure.
Why don't you type it in the chat real quick, and then that way, if it is, then the people who are here get the benefit of knowing what the topic of the show is going to be. No, that's not my topic of the show, actually.
Oh, really?
Not
okay.
Even close, but you do know me well, regardless.
Do you mind if we expand the topic of the show to be a little bit longer to discuss two things, then?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right, with that out of the way, let's get back to it. Some gaming history. We've looked at some current events. Now it's time to take a look back in time. And I want to start with the 1991 game released for the Famicom, so it was not released in the United States at all, called Spartan X2. So this was the sequel to Kung Fu. Do you remember Kung Fu, Mr. Nice Guy?
I absolutely do, for the NES, yeah.
Sweet, yes. Well, so Kung Fu was released in Japan as Spartan X. Presumably because over there they knew better what Kung Fu was, and what that guy was doing was not, in fact, Kung Fu.
It was not Kung Fu.
Yes, so they released it as Spartan X, and it received a sequel called Spartan X2. That was released this past week in 1991. But what is particularly cool is that at least one of the people who's a friend of the podcast, Pazzy, happens to be a speedrunner and a world record holder in Spartan X2.
He's the world record holder?
A world record holder. Let's see. I think he's got spot number 1 on easy. I'll have to double check on the leaderboards, and that might have changed. But I'm positive, 100% positive that he's top 3. But anyway, it's very cool, and it's actually quite a fun game. And a personal friend of mine is actually the person who holds the world record, holds the top spot in that game in hard mode or normal mode, because it's a Japanese game. They just have, anyway, point being is that easy mode world record for a few years. Oh, okay, so he's no longer easy mode world record.
He just told us in the chat that he's not.
Yes. But nonetheless, I'm sure he's still top 3. And so I guess I know people who have the world records in both normal and easy mode for Spartan X2. But nonetheless, anyway, it was in 1991 that game came out, and it's a good game. It's an enjoyable game. Throw it on your Raspberry Pi and let me know what you think.
It's gonna get on there tonight, dude.
So in 1994, there was a special game released for the Super Nintendo, a little game called Super Punch-Out.
Yes.
Now everybody can see I'm holding up my little Mac figurine. I'm a huge fan of the Punch-Out series.
Me too.
And Super Punch-Out was definitely a worthwhile successor to the original Punch-Out released on the Nintendo Entertainment System. But Super Punch-Out was really quite fun, particularly because when they made the first Punch-Out, when they made Mike Tyson's Punch-Out for the Nintendo Entertainment System, they had this idea of making Little Mac, instead of making him small, actually giving him sort of this wireframe, so that you could so that you saw through him at the other opponent. And that was able to be worked out in the arcade version, but in the home console version, it just required too much. So they went with a little sprite for Little Mac in order to do that. But they went back in Super Punch-Out to this idea of being able to see through Little Mac. So in essence, you could make the argument that Super Punch-Out is the way Punch-Out was always meant to be. So I do like the original, but there it is. There are arguments for each side. And then the third one that I want to talk about is the release in 1997, a little game called Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I don't know. Have you ever heard of that one before?
It was okay.
Yeah, just okay?
It was fantastic. It's one of the best, probably the best Castlevania game of all time.
And, I have heard a lot of people say that, and I'm inclined to agree. But additionally, when we say, my favorite genre of game really owes a lot of its genetic makeup to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. As we know, I love the action RPGs, aka Metroidvanias. A lot of the qualities of that subgenre of game happen to come from Metroid, and the other from Castlevania, but specifically Castlevania Symphony of the Night is the big one. Added on leveling up, power-ups, areas that you have to unlock with new abilities that you get as you go down the line. It is, a lot of people say, and I'm inclined to agree, that it is close to a masterclass in game design. Symphony of the Night is. But yeah, it was released in 97 in the US for PlayStation. And in the chat, a lot of love being given for Symphony of the Night. 5 straight hours played when you bought it. Man. So they're definitely right. 1997 Castlevania Symphony of the Night, fantastic game, and yeah, I'm excited to be able to bring that to the forefront, because if you haven't played it, it is well worth your time. And that's what I had for gaming history. Mr. Nice Guy, back over to you, sir.
Absolutely. Well, guys, it's time for a segment. We've kind of switched things up. We previously used to do viewer question of the week, and we still do those. But we want our topics to be a little bit more timely. We want them to be a little bit less generic. So I have found a news story for this week's topic of the week. This comes from RiftHerald.com. And this is kind of a freedom of speech issue that deals with gaming. I want to get Mac's opinion on this. I'll give you some background, guys. This is on, like I said, RiftHerald.com. It says, Richard Lewis reported on Monday that Aaron Rutledge, better known as Riot Sanjuro, no longer works for Riot Games, as evidenced by a post on his Facebook page. And obviously the post is there. It just says, heads up to friends and family, I no longer work at Riot Games. Please call or text me for more details. The article goes on to explain why. It says Riot and Rutledge have made no official statements, though the Riot Sanjuro Twitter account has since been closed. While details of his possible departure from the company are unknown, this comes just days after Rutledge posted on the Reddit for League of Legends Discord server about the popular League of Legends streamer Tyler 1, who has been banned from the game by Riot for the better part of a year. In the Discord, Rutledge stated, he looks like a bleepity human kilos there's a lot of profanity here I'm not going to read. As well as, honestly, it's fine. He'll die from a coke overdose or testicular cancer from the steroids. Then we'll be Gucci. The statements from the Discord were posted in a Reddit thread by user SoulEase. Rutledge later began defending himself by blaming the community, first calling this a witch hunt and saying that they had ruined his life. He then tried to defend the statements as a joke and that people were taking it too far. After all of this, he finally apologized on their original Reddit thread. Both Riot and Tyler1 have also responded to the comments. In the Reddit thread, Riot said, and for those of you who may not know, Riot makes League of Legends one of the biggest games in the industry. This is what Riot said. To be very clear here, what was said is not okay, and we take it extremely seriously. I'd like to apologize on behalf of Riot to both Tyler1 and the community for this. We will be taking action internally to address this, although it would not be appropriate to go into specifics here. Meanwhile, Tyler1 responded on Twitter, saying it really sucks that some people still hold a massive grudge versus old T1 and refuse to acknowledge that I've changed. In another tweet, he continued, quote, with that being said, I have no hard feelings towards the guy. Stuff happens. So here's we'll summarize this, and then I want to get your thoughts, Maction. Bottom line, there's a streamer of League of Legends who gets banned. I don't know why exactly, but he's banned from the game for a year. Riot employee goes on and says, I hope he dies. I hope this happens, blah, blah, blah. Gets fired. Should the guy have been fired for stating his opinion online? It's a public forum. He represents the company. But where do we draw the line between what's freedom of speech? This happens a lot in gaming. We're seeing it with PewDiePie. We're seeing it, with all kinds of people. There was a guy who got fired for tweeting out some jokes about the Nintendo consoles being underpowered because he did it from the company's Twitter. Where do we draw the line between when someone is on company time and when they're not? When it's this type of industry where it's kind of like a startup, you're always on to a certain extent with social media and things like that. Where can the line be drawn? Should this guy have been fired?
So my take on this particular one is that if you tweet something from the company's Twitter or through the company's social media, then that's on company time. If you do it from your own personal, I have difficulty. I mean, I have very strong feelings about people being able to express themselves, on time that's their own, and in some cases, time that maybe is public. I'm alluding to some certain things that may or may not have to do with football. I have feelings about people being welcome to tweet their opinions from their own Twitter accounts and not be fired or not have their firing called for, because that's your personal time and we're all permitted to have our own personal opinions. But if you want to do it through the platform, then you kind of have to be willing to, or through the platform that you've built. So you want to talk PewDiePie, if he's his thing is he's everything. He doesn't get to be off really in the same way that an employee of a company gets to be, have time off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
a public figure.
Yeah, so as a public figure, but I don't really feel like somebody who's an employee for a company, even in some cases, the higher ups, once you hit CEO, I kind of feel like that swings the opposite way. Once you've accepted all that insane amounts of extra money to be the CEO, CTO, CFO, things like that of a company, at that point, I feel like part of your compensation is one, being always sort of a representative of the company, and two, being able to be called in front of Senate hearings and answer for the crimes of your company. So I feel like that's part of the compensation. I mean, that's part of the pay, is that not only you are on the hook, but I don't know. I feel like we're kind of in a gray area, but I'm leaning a bit more toward the big question. The big determining bit for me is, are you doing it on the company's social media, from the company's computers, for example, while at the office? Then that's yes, company time. Let's get you out of there.
What about if someone does it from their personal Twitter? I just want your opinion. I'm curious. Their personal Twitter, but they're a public figure, right? So they have 100,000 followers on Twitter. They happen to work for a company. It's not the company's Twitter, but everyone knows who they are and that they're associated with the company. Can they put in their Twitter description, "My thoughts are my own," and then be excused from those types of consequences? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm asking you tough questions, man. This is investigative journalism right here.
Indeed. You know, that's a wobbler, but honestly, I feel like if you are the public figure, then not so much. But if you are a person employed by a company, so I mean, like, let's say we were huge, Mr. Nice Guy. Let's say we were enormous, right? And we were, and we had a huge following, which of course we do. Those of you in the future, just so that you're going back listening to these podcasts, we've always had a huge following.
Always, since day one.
Just throwing that out there. And somebody who like works for the brand, for the Two Nerds in a Pod, let's say we've got somebody who what they do is they do video editing. They do a Twitter thing on their own account. That's fine. But we, as the people who've decided to be the faces of the brand of Two Nerds in a Pod, we need to be responsible for that. So I'd say no. Once you hit public figure status, which, I mean, that's a fuzzy area, but once you hit public figure status, that you don't get that anymore.
You're right, and you've got it. These people who do these things, first of all, to be clear, and I know Mac will agree with me on this, the statements that gentleman made are deplorable. That's not even what we're debating right now. Saying that someone's going to die of this and that's terrible. But I think that these people, when they say these things, they need to consider that there's other stakeholders, especially in the gaming industry. If you work on a game and there's 500, 1,000 other people who work on that game, consider the fact that if you're a public figure and you say something that negatively impacts the sales, that you're literally taking money out of the mouths of those other people. Now, that said, somebody could go out and they could say something that I completely agree with, right? That's perceived as negative. Like, let's say slavery still existed. Someone could tweet out, "Hey, I think slavery's wrong." And I would say that's right, but it could still have a negative effect on the game. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you have to really consider what you're tweeting, what you're saying, and you don't get to pick the consequences. That's the world that we live in. Mac, you said you wanted to make this a two-parter, and so what's the other story that we got?
Indeed. So the other story is Nintendo has reached an agreement with. So Nintendo, just as a little bit of background for those who aren't aware, on YouTube, if you want to not have your videos that involve Nintendo content taken down by Nintendo, what you need to do is you need to be a part of their Nintendo, I guess, broadcasters program or Nintendo creators program or whatever, wherein content from game or from videos on YouTube that include Nintendo content, that money goes to the money from those videos goes to Nintendo, and then Nintendo will give back to you up to 70% of the earnings from that video. And that'll go back to you. So Nintendo will get their quarters of a tenth of a cent, which makes them feel better about free advertisement and community engagement. However, Nintendo has said that has updated the terms of that, saying that if you are part of the Nintendo Creators Program, you will now not be permitted to, from your account, live stream on YouTube Nintendo content. So, you basically, if you want to live stream, maybe get yourself a new account or jump to a different platform. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But that being said, that is interesting. That's very interesting. So my question for you, Mr. Nice Guy, is how out of touch is Nintendo? More so or less so than they were a couple days ago?
I would say the same amount, because this isn't a new mentality. This is a mentality that has existed for a long time. We're just seeing it more and more prevalently every day. So to use an example from comedy, because I always use comedy examples being a comedian, I once read this article where somebody said that the best way to get your stuff out there and to get known is if you produce your first CD and no one knows who you are, just give it away for free. After your shows, provide people with a link where they can access it, and that will result in people sharing it. It will result in you getting your name out there, and you'll eventually recoup the money by building a fan base. Now, Nintendo is not just starting out, and I get that, but I think they don't realize just how much easy, free advertising and promotion they could get if they would just allow people to use their games and not nickel and dime them, not make them jump through all these hoops. That's not how the internet works. And ultimately, these people who have a big following, they're just going to go somewhere else. They're just going to say, you know what? I'm not going to play Nintendo games anymore, period. I'm just going to go play, one of the other many types of games that are out there that's not a Nintendo exclusive on not a Nintendo console, because Nintendo makes it so hard for people to succeed and just to make a living and to promote their games for free. So I think they are out of touch, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But I'm glad to hear that we both agree that they are just as out of touch today as they were last week. So yeah, Nintendo, good job. Don't you go changing, Nintendo. Don't you go changing.
Don't you change. Start making cartridges again.
And with that, I'm sorry, Mr. Nice Guy, was there anything else?
No, that's what I had, Mac. Now it's over to you.
All
right.
right.
For the next
Well,
segment.
then we'll go on to the next little bit. This segment has to do with crowdfunding. Specifically, it's our Kick or Kickstart. And this is an opportunity for those of you here during the live show to go ahead and interact, give us your thoughts and impressions in the chat. So we'll just, I'll just put this up here. This happens to be a game being funded on Kickstarter currently called Sharon's Crypt. Sharon's Crypt. My mistake. Even Death May Die. So it's a dungeon crawler in the aesthetic of a Game Boy Color game. You don't very often, when talking about pixel games and retro-styled games, you don't often see Game Boy Color being the aesthetic gone for, which is certainly something that made this step out and catch my eye. They're asking for basically $5,000 to go ahead and make this game, and they've already doubled that currently on Kickstarter. So one thing I do like is that they're drawing a little bit on the Lovecraftian idea, although so far from what I can see, the tie-in is somewhat superficial because Sharon's not actually a part of the Lovecraftian lore. But the idea is that you actually play as Sharon, the god of death who's been imprisoned, and you have to fight your way out of this dungeon in order to, go back to doing your job. There are a lot of things that are really cool about it. You defeat enemies and then possess them, and then use their strengths to get even farther through the levels and through the areas. You can phase through solid objects when you're not, when you're in your normal form, and use the various enemies' special attacks. It looks really cool. They do also have the bargain basement pledge if you're interested in the game. And want to have, say, a PC, Mac, or a Linux copy is about $13, and they're estimating to be done around the neighborhood of February 2018. But I really like the look of this. Mr. Nice Guy, anything that stands out or anything that interests you in it?
Now, dude, it looks awesome, first of all. I really, because I have the Retro Pi now, the Raspberry Pi, I'm really into retro-looking games. Now, I didn't quite catch, what is this played on? Is this on PC, or is this, because it looks like a Game Boy Color.
Yeah, so the idea is that this is going to be playable on PC, Mac, and Linux, and their stretch goal, which is, is to put it on Nintendo Switch, which, so if they hit 17,500 euros, because obviously this is a game out of Italy, I think. But if they hit 17,500 euros, then they'll put it on Switch as well, on the Nintendo Switch. But it will be for PC, Mac, and Linux.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm all about this kind of stuff. It reminds me of the Binding of Isaac. It looks like a Binding of Isaac Zelda cross. It's in color, good-looking sprites. It doesn't look like they're asking too much. They need 5,000. Is that what you said earlier?
Yep, and they're at 11,000.
Dude, I'm
already.
all about this kind of stuff. I get a copy for how much?
$13.
I'm gonna wait till it comes to Switch.
Let's see. Early bird. Oh no, $11 if you hit the early bird.
Yeah, $11, but that's for PC, Mac, or Linux. The stretch goal is Switch, and that's where I'd want to play this.
Yeah, and the Nintendo Switch early bird is $16,
and that's not a bad deal. I'm all about this kind of stuff. I'm going to summarize and say I would kickstart this. I think this deserves to be kickstarted.
Okay. Well, you know me, Mr. Nice Guy. I have one rule. I have one really big rule about whether or not
what is it?
Does it have a playable demo? And you know what, Mr. Nice Guy? It has a playable demo.
Woohoo!
But there is something that might change your mind about it. So the Andromeda Project, these are the guys who are making this particular game. They've done 4 Kickstarters before, and of those Kickstarters, of these 3 that they've done before it, they were all trying to get the same game. It was 3 attempts at the same game that just didn't do well. Now, what has me concerned about it is that if you look through the history of these games that they were trying to get done beforehand, that were going to be on PS4, Xbox, Steam, and Switch, their pledge goal, their goal was a lot higher than what it currently is. So, like, for example, 45,000 euros for the last one that they were trying to do. And each of these 3 times, the funding was unsuccessful. When I see and I mean, on the plus side, it did have a demo on these, on these other ones. But when I see something that's being pitched multiple times, that has failed funding at larger sizes, but then they drop what I think, honestly, I feel like $5,000 for a game, even if you're taking your cues from Game Boy, is probably just a little bit too small of an amount. Yeah. I think it's definitely a situation where they put the goal low so that they could, have a win, have a success in the bag, and then, try and get more money. And when you do that, there's a concern or a fear that it might actually not be able to deliver on all the campaign promises because you're banking on people giving you more than what you set your goal at so that you could be successful, but yet, and still try to deliver. So I'm a little bit concerned. And that puts me still in the Kickstart It camp, but only just barely.
That's a good point.
And I think anybody going into this, if you think, go ahead when you put your votes in the chat. But keep in mind, if you're considering kickstarting this yourself, this is something to keep an eye out for in crowdfunding projects. It's not a bad thing. People do have failures, and failures just serve to teach you more, and you learn things from your failures.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not saying this because I want to be like, oh man, they've failed in the past and they tried it several times. I can't support them. But it is one of these things that I'm just like, what's the greater context? And so I'm a little leery, but I myself am definitely going to go kickstart on this one because I like it, and I think, at such a low price point, I don't mind supporting an indie dev for like $10 just for, even if it never winds up happening. I like the idea enough that I'm willing to risk it.
This is one of the cooler ones we've seen recently. I think this is cool. Sorry.
I agree. And so for those of you who are here for the live showing, be sure to type into the chat whether you think this should be kicked to the curb, kicked out of here, or whether you think it deserves to be kick-started. So you go ahead and throw that in there. And yeah, so that's all I had, Mr. Nice Guy. Over to you, sir.
Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for my favorite segment of the show. A segment we like to call the Dummy of the Week. A segment where I talk about someone who did something stupid, idiotic, or downright dumb, and we make fun of them. This one is short and sweet today. It comes from gvnews.com. It's very brief, Mac. A 35-year-old Sahurata GameStop employee was arrested on suspicion of theft September 22nd after a GameStop loss prevention officer discovered numerous gift cards had been stolen. Now, I didn't even know that there were GameStop loss prevention officers. I wonder what that job consists of. We'll get into that maybe a little bit later. It goes on to say Samantha Stiles is accused of using her employee identification number to access the store's computer to load various cards she removed from the shelf with $500 each. How did she think that she was going to get away with this? I'll read the rest of the article. It says Stiles confessed she had loaded more than $10,500 to the cards since August, he said. So she didn't even get away with this for very long. She started doing it in August, got caught very quickly, not even enough time to enjoy the games that she was able to purchase with the stolen gift card money. August, September, October, that's 2 months. How many games can you really play in 2 months? She should have gone with a long con, Mac. She was booked into Pima County Adult Detention Center on one count of theft, a Class 3 felony. So I don't understand. I mean, as a GameStop employee, you know there's cameras in GameStop, right? You also know that if you use your employee ID number to do something, that it's subject to audit, right? So every day, if your register is $500 short because you're doing this once a day, eventually someone's going to say, hey, how are you exactly $500 short? And you're going to say, I don't know. And then they're going to look through your purchases for one that was $500 and realize that the gift card was never paid for. Plus, there's cameras on you as you're doing it. There's timestamps. This is ridiculous. I don't know what she was thinking, Mac. This is insanity. This is one of the worst attempts at getting free stuff of all time. In fact, how was she even, unless she was giving the gift cards away, like if she was just using these herself, was she just like coming in on her day off like, hey guys, I just wanted to buy a new PlayStation. Someone gave me a gift card. And thinking that they would never figure it out. This is terrible. And you guys seem
It's
to
the
agree
perfect crime, Mr. Nice Guy.
The
The
perfect
crime.
That's our Dummy of the Week this week, you guys. Mac, I'll turn it back over to you, man.
All right. Well, the last thing we like to talk about is legalese. Where we talk about something that's going on right now. Sometimes it's things that may be shaping the way we consume our games. Sometimes it's the great court cases of the past. But above all, they all share one common theme, and that is video games. This particular one is a somewhat new one. So you may or may not be familiar with the game company Snail Digital. They don't produce all that many games that we see very often here in the United States, but they are big players in China. I actually have run into them before at the Consumer Electronics Show. And I even have this really nice planner. It's a leather planner that has their logo on it, which I use for some stuff. I mean, I don't know why the game company felt like giving out planners, but hey, they did. Anyway, point being is that this one does involve Snail games. So what is really interesting about this is that Snail Games has filed a lawsuit at Fox, right? For essentially kind of not giving them the assistance that they needed to make a video game for the Planet of the Apes game, the War of the Planet of the Apes game. I didn't even know there was a game being made. And that is kind of the point. So the development studio paid $2.5 million plus royalties to Fox plus royalty agreements in order to secure the rights to make a mobile game based off of the film. with the option to, make an AR game as well. Although that's kind of become a moot point because China's basically banned AR games, but that's neither here nor there. But what is of note is that Snail says, let's see, where is it? Its claims are that they received insufficient assets from Fox and insufficient guidance of the guidance on the content of the movie, which was guaranteed, which was granted, blah 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 blah, which should have been granted by the terms of the contract. So they're filing to get the money back, the $2.5 million back, and pay damages to the company for all of because they had to shell out the money to secure the rights to make the game. They had to go through the expense to make the game, and then the game was never able to be released because, according to their claim, Fox drug their feet the whole way on it, and they just didn't have a product that was able to be brought to market. Were the games to be released months or even weeks after the film, the buzz surrounding the motion picture would have died down, and the games may struggle to be relevant, let alone marketable. That is why, on information and belief, film-based video games generally are released prior to or concurrently with the films. This is not only the industry standard; it is common sense.
No.
So their their claim is that they deserve not only the $2.5 million back, but also damages for the extra expense and the losses that they've sustained by not being able to actually bring it to market.
This was going to be a mobile game?
Yep, a mobile game.
Now, here's where I disagree, and I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, how many video games are made based on movies that really are so loosely tied to the movie, like they really have nothing to do with it? You know what I mean? So I don't think they really needed a ton of details in order to make the game, especially a mobile game. I doubt the mobile game was like so deep that they needed details of the story of the movie in order to make the mobile game appealing. Like, all they had to do was really just name it Planet of the Apes movie game and then just have a game that had apes in it, and that was it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It will come down to the to what the ruling is, and I think that's a legitimate counter argument. Is that, what you paid for was you paid for some amount of assets, and you paid for the rights to use the name. You did not pay for the rights to make the game of the movie. Like Jurassic Park is kind of that way. There's a heck of a lot in the old Jurassic Park games, whether Nintendo or Super Nintendo, that doesn't really line up very much with the game. Like, some stuff's there and some stuff's kind of similar, but for the most part, I don't remember Dr. Grant walking around with a bazooka. Just saying.
You don't see a dinosaur eat someone off the toilet like you did in the original Jurassic Park in the game.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how it happens, but that is one little bit of legalese that's going on right now, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not Snail gets that money back. I sure feel for them, though, especially if they were trying to go for something that was true to the movie. And I suppose after Firefly, I think I'm pretty ready to see Fox as the bad guy. So I'm pretty biased.
Mac, avid Firefly watcher. All 13 episodes of it, and the movie, the spinoff. Well, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, y'all got nerdy with us today, and we appreciate it. This is the end of our show, but before we wrap up episode 44, we like to do one last segment that we call What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about what we've been watching and what we've been playing. Obviously, that's what we talk about. What else would it be about, really? So, guys, here's where you get to be interactive with us. Let us know in the chat what you have been watching and what you have been playing, because we're always looking for cool, nerdy stuff to play, to watch, whether it's Blu-rays, DVDs, TV shows. Let us know. Mac, do you want to start us off?
I do, and let me start with what I've been playing, Mr. Nice Guy. So I mentioned a little while back that I got my HDMI Sega Genesis.
Yes.
But I don't believe I mentioned last week, or maybe I did, that I've got my HD Nintendo now.
Oh, you didn't?
Yes, I did, Mr. Nice Guy.
I don't think you mentioned that.
No. I mean,
I
I've got
believe
it.
you got it. Yeah. Well, congrats. I'm happy. That's sweet.
So I'm just going to hold it up for those of you to see. Wah, wah. It's based off of the design is based off of a sort of unreleased NES prototype, but it's really cool, and the pixels are so sharp I could cut my teeth on them.
That's fantastic.
And most importantly, it plays my Flash cartridge flawlessly, which I had one of those smaller, less expensive HD Nintendos, and they wouldn't play my Flash cartridge at all, which was kind of a deal breaker for me. And yeah, so I've been playing that, but also over the weekend I did play some Left 4 Dead 2 with a friend of mine, and I have discovered. Well, I mean, people discovered it before me, but there are some amazing add-on campaigns for Left 4 Dead 2. Specifically, we were only able to get a little bit of the way through a game that basically recreates Resident Evil 1 in Left 4 Dead 2. So you have keys, the armor key, the shield key, the helmet key. You're in the mansion. You're going around through the grounds. It is more or less Resident Evil 1, but just done in Left 4 Dead 2, and you have waves of zombies and specials. It is fan-freaking-tastic and amazing. Like and I mean, sure, we ran into one or two little glitches, but for the fact that it's making a game do a bunch of things that it was never originally programmed to do, oh my gosh, it's amazing. So yeah, if you've got Left 4 Dead 2 on your PC, crank that thing back up and search for the Resident Evil campaigns. They are a treat. So yeah, that's what I've been playing. Mr. Nice Guy.
Cool. So I'll do what I've been watching and what I've been playing. I want to start off with, I'll start off what I've been playing to be consistent. Destiny 2. I've been all about that Destiny 2, man. It's amazing. I'm having a blast with it. 270 light level. I'm having issues getting gear above 265 power. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm on that Destiny grind, just grinding, trying to get up to 305 max before I go off and start getting the exotic weapons. Because if you play the game, you know that the exotic weapons match up with your power level when you get them. So you want to be as high power level as possible. Also, I've been playing some Fortnite. Now, Mac, I know I mentioned that game to you. It's free download, PUBG style mode, and I found out today that it is cross-play compatible, dude, with PS4 and PC. So if you'd be willing to download it, we could play cross-play, and we could hook up Skype. We could chat via Skype. Now, I will say it is kind of PvP-ish because it's a PUBG last man standing style game, but there are other modes that are co-op. So,
well, hey, if you've got my back, I'm willing to risk it.
We may need to give it a shot, do a little dual stream. We'll see. So I've been playing those two games. Super hyped that today for PS Plus we got Metal Gear Solid 5. That's a game that I missed when it came out, and I'm very excited that that's a free title. Splinter Cell's my favorite franchise. Metal Gear Solid stealth action, very similar. That's what I've been playing. There's a few other things, but we'll leave it at that. As far as what I've been watching, I just checked out yesterday the new Marvel show, The Gifted. And I'm curious if those of you in the chat, how many of you checked it out and what did you think of it? Takes place in the same universe as X-Men. It's a point in time where the X-Men are kind of non-existent. People don't know if they are still alive, if they're still around. So there's another underground of mutants that exists. It's a lot like Heroes, the TV show, but I feel like it's not cliche, if that makes sense. So my wife and I watched the premiere last night. Really enjoyed it. It's online if you want to check it out. You can watch it on demand. Also, just checked out Wonder Woman. Had not seen Wonder Woman yet. Watched it on Blu-ray. Good movie. I was disappointed because people built it up, but I did enjoy it. And what else have I been watching? Still watching Madam Secretary and Arrow, last season of Arrow on Netflix. So that's it for me, Mac. Did you ever talk about what you've been watching? You just went over the games you've been playing.
I honestly haven't had time to basically watch anything, so it's just been games and other stuff. But on the subject of Wonder Woman, I did enjoy it. I think my favorite part was the one where they get to London and she's like, "It's hideous." He's like, "Yeah, it's not for everyone." I was like, "Yeah, it is pretty hideous." She's right.
Well, the good news is if you like Wonder Woman, people in the chat, you got Justice League coming out in November. So you can get some more Wonder Woman, Batman, Flash, all that good stuff in your life. Mac, do you want to read what people have been watching and playing in the chat?
Absolutely.
There's a lot.
On the game side, we have, of course, some fellow kindred spirits with Destiny 2. We've got Batman Return to Arkham, Horizon Zero Dawn, Nier Automata, Persona 5, Uncharted: The Last Legacy. And as for what people are watching, the new It seemed to have been well received. The Hobbit trilogy. Oh, I did not like that. But oh well, Pazzy's enjoying it. And let's see, Magnificent 7 and Blade Runner 2049 hits. Oh, that's right. It does come out this Friday. I am excited to see Blade Runner, and I think I'm going to go watch that. And also a plug for Star Trek Discovery. So I've been a little bit worried about Star Trek Discovery, especially because here in the US, it's behind a paywall. You have to pay $6 for CBS All Access, and that includes ads on everything you watch. And basically, the only thing that's in CBS All Access is all of the television Star Treks. And then you have to pay $10 monthly if you want there to not be ads. So I have some conflicted feelings about that. I think I'm probably going to wait until after all the episodes are out before I, plonk down money on a month and watch them all in one go. But nonetheless, good to hear that Star Trek Discovery is all right. But that's what people have been watching and playing.
Fan-freaking-tastic. Well, Mac, if you don't mind me doing a quick plug, after the stream ends here, I probably will go stream some Destiny 2 on my personal channel. I just posted the link to that in the chat, twitch.tv/MrNiceGuy425. This has been episode number 44. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back next week. Same bat place, same bat time, same bat rhymes here on twitch.tv/2NerdsInAPod. We will see you next week. Be sure to keep it nerdy. Deuces.